Right, listen, there's only one person to bring a bit of sense. Former MEP and Brexiteer, the legend that is Ben Habib. A very good afternoon to you, sir. How are you?
Good afternoon, Jeremy. Good to see you.
So today is literally about common sense, because I can talk about Trump and Starmer to a degree, but I want to start on the things, because I always thought, you know me, Ben, it's what gets the British public certainly listening to this. And the number one news story at this precise moment in time, BH, as I like to call you, is this. Police officers have been told not to use the terms black sheep and blacklisted in case they offend someone. This was a document, a diversity guide for staff at Bedfordshire Police and Hertfordshire and Cambridgeshire constabularies. You would be portraying certain groups as inferior or others as superior by using the term black. It states also that pregnant person should be used, Ben Habib, instead of the references to pregnant women, and Christian-centric language like the term faith should be avoided at all costs. Ben Habib.
Well, I mean, this is symptomatic of the end of civilization, where language is, loses all its meaning, and we can't speak in a way that we understand each other. Yeah. These colloquial terms are shorthand to convey messages quickly, and they're long established and used in the English language. And those who wish to hijack the debate use language as a tool to deliver their ideological aims. For example, you said you can't say pregnant woman, you have to say pregnant person, as if a person could be pregnant if they're not a woman. And of course, the subliminal imaging and message there is, well, actually, as a man, you can be pregnant. But of course, it's ridiculous. You can't be. Right. So it is end of civilization stuff. We've lost the ability to communicate properly.
But we make it, but it makes a mockery. I mean, and I made this point seriously, and I'm going to make it all day, because out of the corner of my eye, Auschwitz, 80 years since the liberation of those death camps, where 6 million people were simply put to death because of their religion, okay? Simply that. And we're in a country run by a socialist who wants to destroy any chance to make anything if you're in business or any success of your life. We've got crap public services. We've got a problem with immigration. We've got the highest taxation of 70 years. And we've got the Navy worrying about renaming a ship and the police being too terrified to say you're blacklisted. We're becoming an embarrassment, Ben, an embarrassment.
Yeah, I mean, it's an embarrassment. But if it just stopped being, at that point, being an embarrassment, I could live with it. It's much worse than that, isn't it? Yeah. We're hollowing out our economy, we're hollowing out our country, we're damaging our democratic institutions, all of it on the various altars of this extreme left-wing, liberal, global, Marxist kind of order. So, you talk about the economy, we all know, every sane-minded individual in the United Kingdom knows that the drive to net zero is destroying our economy. Our fuel bills are 3 times what they are in the US. President Trump rightly said he's going to fill up his oil tankers right to the brim again. And he's going to make Europe buy oil if they want any kind of relationship with the United States, if they want to avoid tariffs. He had to get up just to simply... So one of the things he said in his speech, one of the obvious things he shouldn't have had to say is that there are only 2 sexes, men and women. I mean, we're having to write the listing ship to the point that the obvious has to be said in order just to get back to, some kind of sane conversation.
And you talk about
so far gone.
You talk about sanity, and you're dead right. I did just the other one today is the Navy. I mean, woke Navy bosses, Ben, want to rename an attack submarine that was earmarked under Grant Shapps, the Defence Secretary, to be called HMS Agincourt. They're now going to call it HMS Achilles for fear of upsetting the French. And this just in from Steve Chandler, who says, regarding HMS Agincourt's name change, I'm surprised they're keeping the HMS. Why not go the full bloody hog and call it TMS, Their Majesty's ship? It's embarrassing, man. Embarrassing.
It is. It's wretched. And I think one of the poll recently out, for example, today, had 76% of the British people 76% of right-wing voters, Tories and Reform voters, over 55% of voters generally, wanting to enforce borders. Yet we don't enforce our borders. No. The British people are saying it's our political class that's lost its marbles. And, we need to guide the political class back to some sense of, back to sense.
Common sense.
Common sense, yeah.
And it is really interesting. I mean, we spoke after Trump's speech last week, and I think we should sue him because he kept saying, didn't he, this is a revolution of common sense. We've been saying it for 5 years here. But I thought what was really interesting was that British voters, they did a poll over the weekend. Did you see this? And British voters actually back many of his policies. They did a survey, and a majority said, yeah, we don't have to like the bloke, like I've said. I mean, there's stuff he says that makes me want to go and hide under a table. But I'll tell you what, if I was talking about making my country profitable, if I was talking about making my country safe, if I was talking about my country getting its reputation back, I'd have Donald Trump in a heartbeat tomorrow, wouldn't you?
Every single one of his policies makes sense for the United States of America and would make perfect sense in the United Kingdom. Yeah. It's actually why, I don't know if you picked it up, Jeremy, I've just set something up called the Great British Political Action Committee. It's a bit of a mouthful.
British PAC, yeah, I wanted to hear about this. Great British PAC. What's that?
Yeah, so it's something that they use in the States. It's a political activist group which uses money, the making of policy, the appointment and choosing of candidates, and the pressuring of political parties to do the right thing. It's an activist group, and the purpose behind it really is aimed at reform and the Tories to make sure that our so-called right-wing politicians in this country actually adopt the agenda, roughly, that Trump has laid out, because that's what the British people want. But there's so much timidity at the top of government, at the top of our political class, that doing something like declaring a national emergency for our borders, mass deportation of illegal migrants, for example, which is one of Trump's policies, people haven't got the guts to say that that's what they wish to do in the political arena.
Is it possible politically in the United Kingdom? I mean, I woke up on Saturday morning to that image of a criminal, I think Colombian drug-related criminals, illegally in the United States, on a tarmac, shackled by chains, being led to a deportation plane. Now, I know, because my brother-in-law was there. Oh, my God. No, why not? If you're not going to do what you need to do to enforce what you believe, I suspect, and this will go down like a lead balloon, I suspect if you saw that in the United Kingdom, the world would be really surprised, and so would this country, because I think a majority of people would say, yeah, sorry, and I think it's cost of living, and I think it's COVID. I think the British people have woken up to the fact that it doesn't work anymore to say, yeah, we should always be, yes, of course we should always help, but you know what, there comes a point where if you can't help your own, charity, and I, when you use the phrase charity begins at home, it sounds terrible, but there are so many people in this country suffering in silence, but I don't think they're suffering in silence as much as they were. I think they're prepared to say now, you might not like what I think, but actually I want the illegal migrants out of this country. I want to be able to see a doctor. I don't see why that's...
Absolutely.
And I, like you, people will say that's racist, it's xenophobic.
No, it's not racist.
It's honest.
And you're also with the majority. That's what the majority of people want in this country. That's what that poll revealed. Those policies that Trump is putting into place, the 100 executive orders, which he so brilliantly signed on his first day, they represent what the British people want. We want it. And our politicians won't deliver it because they're hijacked by some kind of ideology, which I don't think even our politicians understand. They've just been cowed into timidity.
Do you think it's the system? Like in America, he can be president, he can go out on a limb. What would happen if a politician or a would-be politician in this country stood up? I didn't get a chance to say it to you last week. I said it to a couple of people and said, right, listen, I'm running for office. And I'll be really honest with you, right? I'm not talking about me, by the way, if anybody's ringing. I've been divorced a couple of times. I smoked that when I was 18. I got sacked from that job. I had an affair when I was 34. I'm not perfect, but you know what? Here's what I'm going to say to you. This is my vision. This is my aim. And if you vote for me, I will steadfastly stick to that. I'll tell you the good and the bad. I'll tell you when I mess up and when I have a success. But if you stay with me, I guarantee we'll be in a better place. What do you think would happen to that person?
I think people would vote for that person. Yeah. That person obviously needs to build a brand. Yeah. And the only two brands on the right wing at the moment are Reform UK and the Conservative Party. And I don't think there's room for another brand, frankly. There's no room for another political party. But we've got to make sure that these two political parties between them, and remember, in aggregate, they're now polling at over 50%. Yeah. If they got together, if this was what things were looking like in 2028 in terms of polling, there would be a thumping majority for the right wing. There would be a thumping majority if they could get their act together. So my job as chairman of the Great British PAC, and the Great British PAC's job now, is to convince politicians, both in Reform UK and in the Conservative Party, that it's okay to talk about a national emergency at our borders. It's okay to accept and promote mass deportation of illegal migrants. It's a requirement that we ditch DEI. It's a requirement that we ditch net zero. We don't need to hold the hands of the British people and slowly walk in that direction.
Absolutely.
We need to move the Overton window, the centre of gravity of accepted political opinion, to where the British people are, which is the protection, promotion, celebration and prosperity of the United Kingdom and its people. At the heart of policy, that's got to be what's there. And the Great British PAC is going to put pressure. It's not going to sidle up to, it's not going to befriend, it's not going to try and do it gently. It's going to put pressure on Reform UK and the Conservatives to do the right thing by this country and what the majority of this country want.
I hope you're successful. My only point that I would make is this. The dynamic of that, because I've always said, and you might disagree with this, but I took real exception when people said, oh, reform's far right. I was brought up in a Tory household, and much of what reforms say and have talked about is exactly that. So they get labelled far right. You look at the Tories who, even under Johnson, and I haven't criticised him too often, were hell-bent seemingly on net zero and the changing world and all that. And I think that's why Starmer got in, and I think there needs to be a definitive line. But you're right, that will be blurred. I don't personally see Baden not lasting. I just don't, and I think that the Conservative Party...
But you know...
I think the Conservative Party will have a very stark choice. They'll either go back to a centrist politician like James Cleverly, or they'll try and take Nigel Farage and Reform's ground with a Robert Jenrick, which they probably thought they were going to do in the first instance. But it'll be very interesting. And the Great British PAC, you're right, because if you join together, Labour wouldn't get in power again for years, decades.
No, I mean, if both Reform UK and the Tories got on the bandwagon that is Trump's vision for America, delivered that vision for the United Kingdom, if they both got there, they would collectively, somehow, through an arrangement or whatever, would have a thumping majority. And that's what we want. I don't really care how we deliver the political agenda that is Trump's agenda for the US, but we've got to deliver it for the United Kingdom. We've got to find a way to do it. And by the way, I think reform isn't right-wing enough, frankly. I'm seeing reform tacking to the centre ground. Nigel is on the record saying he's not worried about the rate of demographic change. He thinks mass deportation of illegal migrants is not practical. He wants a referendum on the ECHR. I just want to leave the ECHR. I don't want a referendum. I want to leave, right? And we've got to get our politicians to stop being so timid. I know why Nigel's doing what he's doing. He wants to carry what he believes to be the majority of the people in this country with him. He thinks that the centre ground is where you win the election. That is not where we're going to win the next election. The election has to be won by being unashamedly pro-British and putting the United Kingdom first and adopting these common sense policies, including a national border emergency, including the mass deportation of detaining and then deporting illegal migrants, including ditching net zero, including ditching DEI. All these things have to be front and centre of our political establishment. And I aim to make that the case.
Good man. Final question for you, Ben, and it's always great to have you on. So I was a little bit surprised and read at the weekend that Donald Trump had his first call with Starmer. He then said he's doing a really good job and he's going to visit soon. Is he playing with him? I think
he's playing with him. Yeah, he's playing with him. Yeah, it made me smile when I read that.
Yeah. My brother-in-law is a lefty. He said, oh, look, you see the great man's falling out. I said, no. He's absolutely playing him like a good one, isn't he? The British PAC interests me, mate. Really good as ever to have you on. We'd love to have you on every single week. Could you be the bridge that unites the right? Ben Habib, thank you very much indeed.